In our series on the new normal, we look at how the pandemic is dramatically changing our everyday lives and how those changes affect the way we work, the way we learn, socialize, and travel. And as we mentioned earlier, Twitter announced that all of its employees will be allowed to work from home forever if they want to. Big change there. A new survey from our partners at LinkedIn found 54% of Americans say that working from home has boosted their productivity. But at the same time, 51% said it also increased feelings of loneliness. Dan Roth is the editor-in-chief of LinkedIn, and he joins me now. Dan, good morning. I want to get to both of those numbers, but first, the increase in productivity. I got to say, I'm a little bit skeptical, but 54% of people say they're more productive working from home. In what ways?
The main one is not needing to have a commute. I mean, the amount of time that we lose trying to get to work and trying to get home from work, that is all time that you can now use answering emails or trying to get through your to-do list or even dealing with stuff around home. So people are loving the fact that they don't have to commute. It doesn't make up for other issues. So there are lots of problems that come with this, but the fact is they're not spending time in the car, they're not spending time on the subway, and then they're also not losing time in the break room. Now, we can talk about whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, but you don't have your colleague, coming over the cubicle wall and telling you jokes or sending you the latest sports scores. You really can just focus on what you need to focus on.
Yeah, well, that's definitely true. You don't have the colleague coming over, but you've got your kid coming over, or your dog coming over, or the goldfish needs to be fed, or your spouse is in the room, or I just have to get one thing, I'll be out in a second. All of that, all those interruptions, divide up our ability to pay attention and do our work. So what are tips you might have to keep people productive despite this melee all around them?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, we surveyed professionals and asked them what kind of interruptions, whether they were having interruptions and what they were like. Nearly a third said that they were being interrupted by family members. The next step was technology challenges that were interrupting them, and then it was pets, spouses, and kids. So there are all kinds of problems that we face at home. What we have heard from members about how they deal with it are, number one, they are trying to make sure that they have a regimented approach to their day and that they are talking to their family about it. Here's what my day is like. Here are the hours that I can work. I can tell you that my wife and I have a intricate schedule for when she is running her company and when I'm trying to do my job and when we're homeschooling our 3 kids. So we try to make it work. We go over the schedules in the morning. We hear a lot of people saying they're doing that. And they're also trying to make sure that they have it very segmented on what part of their day is work and what part of their day is family. So that you can close the computer at some point and say, I'm done. Even though I'm walking 2 feet away from where I was just working, I am now in family mode rather than in work mode.
Yeah. Important distinction. All right, so putting aside productivity, let's talk about creativity. We mentioned the break room earlier. Yeah. The break room is actually a place where you might share an idea, get some feedback. I mean, it can be a productive moment. Without that interaction with a colleague, how can you inspire creativity when you're at home?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of people who are trying to be as creative as they can with still having those unscripted moments with colleagues. The problem is you have to have scripted, unscripted moments in these times of quarantine. So I've heard about people doing things where for like a half hour they will get together with colleagues and they will say, we're going to bake something together. We're going to find a recipe from start to finish that takes a half hour to do and get your ingredients ahead of time. And then they just leave their cameras open and they talk to each other the whole time they're doing it. And you kind of have a little bit of room for having those unscripted conversations. That's a big one. It still means having to get the right people in the room. You don't have that experience where someone, Stanley walks by and mentions something and you're like, oh God, I didn't put 2 and 2 together, and you come up with some idea, which is where so many of these ideas come from. And I think that companies are going to struggle with finding ways to have those bits of inspiration where just something connects, 2 people connect in a way they wouldn't have come together before, and something great comes out of it. My guess is that in the next couple of years, we'll see a lot of people trying to invent ways to allow us to do that virtually, because right now it's a total challenge.
Very cool and very good tips. My tip here for productivity, this is the only room in the house, my basement, where there's not a lot of traffic coming in and out. So actually take this chair, turn it around, and work at the desk right behind me, turning off the monitor. That's how I get things done. Took me 2 months to figure out that little hack, but I have it now. Dan Roth, thank you very much. We appreciate it. And you can hear more from Dan on today's CBS This Morning podcast. He discusses Thank you very much. What the new normal at work might look like after the pandemic. There will be an after. And he offers advice to college grads entering the workforce for the first time.